So, are you a gardening rule follower or a rule breaker? Part of what I love the most about gardening is the fact that you can do whatever you want to do in your garden as an experiment to see what happens. And today I want to talk to you about the secrets to plant spacing, the secrets to seed spacing, and why what's on the back of the packet is not set in stone, it's not the gospel, and you don't have to follow it. As you know by now, in this challenge, which is day 10 of the 30-day gardening challenge, we're 1/3 of the way done, and we're going from zero to a full garden in 30 days. You are going to know everything you need to know, whether you are a brand new gardener or you're just brushing up on some things. You're going to know everything you need to know to start your own garden. And so today we're talking about plant spacing because I want for you to have a very prolific garden. I want you to grow a noticeable and an impactful amount of food in your yard, back porch, front porch, wherever you're growing for this challenge. I want you to grow an amount of food that's impactful, and I want it to impact your bottom line dollar-wise. I want there to be enough food for you so that you don't ever go back to not growing. And so in order to make that an impactful amount of food, you have to be able to bend the rules a little bit when it comes to how much spacing you put between your plants. And I want to talk to you about some rules of thumb that I use to get some amazing productivity out of my garden. And it doesn't matter whether you have a small space or, pushing an acre like I do, you can still maximize your efficiencies the same exact way that I do. Doesn't matter if you never sell anything in your life. None of those things matter. So I want to get right into this because this is a crucial lesson and I want you to learn some things about having an experimental spirit. So everything in my garden I look at as an experiment, and I love to take videos. I love to do before and afters, and I love to take what is known as conventional wisdom and test it rigorously to see if it holds true for me. And if it does not hold true for me, I'm confident enough to ditch the conventional wisdom and go my own way for things. I do it all the time. It is probably what I'm most proud of in my personality and just how I'm made is that I don't automatically just do what I'm told or only do things one way, right? I try a lot of things and see what sticks. Plant spacing for sure is one of those things. So I want you to take that approach as well. So there are a lot of garden varieties or types of food in the garden that have had a very long-standing understanding of how they should be placed. For example, a pepper plant needs at least 2 feet, right? A tomato plant, you've got to have 2 feet around that tomato plant in order to have success. You want to make sure your bean plants are spread out, or you need several square feet for cucumbers and things like that. I'm here to tell you that that's not accurate. It doesn't hold true for me, and it doesn't have to hold true for you. So for things like beans, I do like to give my bean plants about 10 inches between each plant within a row. But then I also like to give them only about 10 inches between each plant, each row in that garden. So on a 30-inch bed, I am planting 3 rows of green beans. So that's roughly 10 inches between and 10 inches from plant to plant within that row. Now, what happens when you plant intensively like this is I can take what used to, in a traditional garden, take 100 feet long. Like if you want to grow beans, you have a 100-foot long row of beans. I can get the same productivity in just over 30 feet of a bed. And that is huge for me because I can triple my growing, or I can cut back on the growing and be able to fit it in a smaller place. The same holds true for things like okra. I like to space those a little tighter than what you would normally space. Tomatoes are the same. I plant my tomato plants 1 foot apart from each other. And that seems really close to you if you are planting things using traditional spacing. If you use traditional spacing, you are familiar with things like 2 or 3 feet between tomato plants. And a lot of people will just say, well, you know what? This is my home garden. If I don't need to pull out every tiny bit of production, why would it matter if I wanted to spread them out? Well, for me, I find that it matters when I'm purchasing infrastructure. If I'm purchasing hoops to cover a bed for the cold, or if I'm purchasing hoops and netting to keep the cucumber beetles off my cucumbers, for example, I want to make sure that I buy as little insect netting as possible because insect netting is expensive. And so I plant my cucumbers. The pack says, plant your cucumbers in one row and plant them. I don't know. Some packs, it varies, but some packs say plant them to give each plant 2 to 3 feet. I don't do that. I plant my cucumbers two to a bed, 2 to a 30-foot bed. So that means I give them 15 inches between plants, and I grow them up on a trellis, either a cattle panel or reusable nylon trellis, anything like that. I can use as a trellis. And so my point here is that if you're growing up, you can pack them in tighter. You also can prune cucumbers, which I don't think a lot of us have done. I actually know that you can prune cucumbers, but I haven't done it on a regular basis. I've just done it when I think about doing it. Whereas with tomatoes and peppers, I do it more frequently. So you can prune those leaves off so that you get more airflow. A lot of people are afraid to pack the plants in because they are afraid of reduced airflow, which will lead to fungal issues. And while that can happen, I don't want it to steer you away from making a choice to pack in the plants as much as possible. Where you really also find a lot of benefit to packing in your plants is when you're planting flowers. So a lot of plant packets will tell you, or seed packs will tell you, to give 18 to 24 inch spacing between your zinnias. And that's just not necessary. And the closer that you pack those together, the smaller some of the blooms will be, which can be good for you if that's what you're looking for in a bouquet. But in other terms or other types of flowers, that's just not the case at all. So you can really pack those plants in. It allows you to get more plants in to a smaller square footage, which reduces your cost. Because if you have to cover a bed, let's say you have to cover it because a frost is coming. If you've got those plants squeezed into a smaller space, you don't have to cover as much. You don't have to pay for as much cover. It takes less time. And so I find lots and lots of benefits to squeezing plants in. Also for things like scallions, for example, what I like to do is I like to take a handful of scallion, or like a pinch of my scallion seeds, probably 8 to 10, however many I would put in a bunch of scallions. And I just plant those in together. And then I plant that little plug of plants. Once it's grown about that big, I plant that out in the same planting hole. And those plants will just find their way together so that when I harvest, I can harvest them all together. And it doesn't say to do that on the packet. It probably says to plant them in a thin row and then thin them out so that you have one scallion, and then, a couple inches over you have another scallion. That just doesn't work for me because I want to pack in as much food as possible. And so I routinely get 100 bunches or more, 100 scallion bunches or more on a 20-foot row. And that just works for me. Another benefit of packing things in, besides not having to spend as much money on your infrastructure, is that you can cut down on the weeds that grow. And this is especially true for things like beans. If you're planting 3 rows of beans, like I talked to you about before, those plants will crowd out. They will shade. They've got pretty good sized leaves, and pretty quickly they will grow. The canopy of beans will grow. The bean leaves will shade out most any other weeds that you have coming up. Same is true for cucumbers. Same is true for things like okra that have really big leaves. So what I want you to do is think about the spacing that we're talking about today. Think about what the back of the packet says, and then do some experimentation on your own, because being able to pack in food into a small space that you're growing is going to be your, bar none, your biggest opportunity for massive increases in your harvest, massive increases in the dollar value of what you're saving with your backyard. So that's all I've got for you today. I want you to think about that. Take a look at that list of food that you're going to grow. We've generated that list in some of our previous episodes, and think about how your spacing might vary from what's on the back of the pack. If you have any questions about it, pop them down below, because I'm sure myself or someone who's watching can help answer that question. And tomorrow we're going to talk about interplanting or companion planting that actually works. Companion planting is the act of planting multiple species of plant that aren't the same, planting them together in close proximity for very specific reasons, for advantageous reasons. And so there are lots of things to do. You've probably heard about companion planting. We're going to address it tomorrow, so stick around. Follow me, subscribe wherever you're seeing this, just to make sure you get this challenge content. I will see you tomorrow. Bye for now.